Hey there, I'm Steve, and welcome to Jamson Entertainment. And welcome to the conversation. Just before we get started, there are many ways you can help. You can like and subscribe so you never miss a conversation. But most importantly, please share this video. Get the word out there as a community we can talk about all the things that we love. Today on Throwback Thursday, we're looking at the 7th Star Trek film, Generations. I'm in a different location this week and next week because I'm watching my parents' dog again. This is starring Patrick Stewart, Jonathan Frakes, Brent Spiner, LeVar Burton, Michael Dorn, Gates McFadden, Marina Sirtis, Malcolm McDowell, James Doohan, Walter Koenig, William Shatner, Alan Rook, Jacqueline Kim, Tim Ross, but if you're familiar with Star Trek, he's not playing Tuvok, Barbara March, Gwyneth Walsh, and Whoopi Goldberg. This movie is very cleverly named Generations because it's bridging the gap between the original series and Next Generation. The movie opens up with the christening of Enterprise B, and like all Star Trek films, it has to indulge introducing the Enterprise. In christening the new Enterprise, Captain Kirk, Commander Scott, and Commander Chekhov are there for its maiden voyage. The captain of the Enterprise B is Captain Perryman, played by Alan Rook, most known for before this movie as Fry from Ferris Bueller's Day Off. The scene does many things, among showing how well Kirk is not taking retirement, and that's mostly shown through his treatment of everyone around him. He's kind of short with people. He doesn't really have an explosion of anger, but he's irritated. You have all these cameras all over the place because it's not only just the christening of Enterprise B, but Captain Kirk is on the bridge of Enterprise B. This is huge news in this universe. Like most beginnings to Star Trek stories, this is only supposed to be what Captain Harriman says a quick walk around the block, which would be our solar system. Of course, it'd be a very short movie if it was just that. There's a distress signal 3 light years away, and of course, the Enterprise is the only ship nearby. The captain is doing his best with the situation. When they get there, they notice this huge energy field that's engulfed these 2 transport ships of refugees. And if they don't act, they're going to lose everyone. And you can see how antsy Captain Kirk is. He can't help but be captain of the Enterprise when he's on the Enterprise. Scotty notices and makes a joke about it. Is there something wrong with your chair, Captain? Captain Harriman is talking to his crew, trying to figure out a solution to the problem, and at one point he turns to Captain Kirk, and the captain's like, no, I can't, but even though he really wants to. They come up with a solution. Part of that solution involves Kirk going down to the engine room because the ship isn't ready for anything like this. And the running joke in this scene is that everything they need at this moment in time is arriving on Tuesday. One idea was to send a torpedo into this energy field to disrupt it just enough so they can beam over the passengers and escape. They're not arriving till Tuesday. There's not a full crew on the ship. They're not arriving until Tuesday. I forget what the third thing was. So Kirk goes down to engineering to do what needs to be done, and that section of the ship gets torn away by this energy field. Now this isn't a spoiler, this is vital to the plot. Kirk dies. I'm going to get into why I'm putting that in air quotes. And Fry will go down in history as the captain that lost Captain Kirk under his command. Fast forward to what would be present day in this universe to Captain Picard's crew on the Enterprise D. It opens up with them promoting Lieutenant Worf to Lieutenant Commander Worf. This is where you start seeing one of the problems with the movie. It has comedy in it. The previous films also had comedy in them, but this one does it just a little too often. It doesn't help that later Data, who, if you're fans of the show, you either love or you hate Data. I'm not a fan of Data. He gets an emotional chip that Geordi puts into his brain, his neural net. Because he's never had emotions before, antics occur, but also it really impedes his ability to perform his duties. From my understanding, the fans of Data love him because he's kind of like Spock in the way where he doesn't understand human emotions. The difference between these two characters is that Data wants to become more human. That's his whole goal. And he feels that he's gone as far as he can becoming human without the emotion chip, and that the emotion chip is the logical next step. I find Data annoying because because he almost never uses contractions, and I'm not a fan when characters are written like that. Ironically enough, my favorite character, Worf, is written that way. I don't know why Worf doesn't use contractions. It's quite annoying, but the reason why I like Worf, and also Spock, there are two outsiders that learn and grow from their experience with humans. And I can kind of relate to that because I've never been popular growing up. I've always been very shy. And that's something I've been working on my entire life. So I've always kind of been an observer, much like Spock and Worf. They have two different ways in how they observe and interact with humans. But it is, yes, I'm going to say it, fascinating seeing them grow as characters. Data is just like, how do human? I wish to be human. I just find it utterly annoying. It's worse when he gets the emotion chip. I really went off course. Alright, so shortly after Worf becomes Lieutenant Commander, there is another distress signal, and it's for the same reason, except this time it's on a space station, and there's only one survivor. And something I forgot to mention when I was talking about the section with Kirk, the only survivors from the rescue that Captain Perryman was in charge of was 46 people out of roughly 400 people between the two ships. Among them are Guinan, played by Whoopi Goldberg, and Sauron. No, not that Sauron. Not that Sauron either. Played by Malcolm McDowell, who is the perfect villain no matter what movie he's in. Malcolm McDowell played Alex in A Clockwork Orange, and that role has largely never left him. Yes, I've seen him in other things, and he does a great job of being all types of characters. But he's such a great villain. He's relatable in the fact that his whole plan in this movie, the energy field that was experienced with Captain Kirk, you later find out is something called the Nexus, or that's at least what Guinan's people, the Elorians, call it. It's not just a random ribbon of energy floating through space. It is a place where time doesn't exist, and it gives you all the wants that you desire. It allows you to live different lives that you may have dreamed of. Like, it's basically, you're zagging when you zigged in your present life. Now, that's how Guinan explains it, that's how it works, but also the movie uses it for other purposes, which kind of makes it a Deus Ex Machina type thing. You can go to any point in time that you want and experience any reality that you want, but you can also change things, like in your own timeline. If the movie stuck with Guinan's definition of the Nexus, that shouldn't be possible, but they use it as a convenient plot device. That's how Kirk is not dead. I'm going to get to that real quick though. So in Sauron's plot to get back to the Nexus, because he lost his family to the Borg, there's a Jamson called trilithium. Now dilithium is an element that enables warp. Trilithium is like the next step in that, but it's still new, and just like any new technology, people try to figure out how to turn it into a weapon. Sauron did that, and when it's a weapon, it can be launched into a sun, disrupting the sun and having it collapse and explode. And if it's the center of a solar system, it's going to destroy that solar system. Also, changing the way gravity is affected in that area, which changes the course of the Nexus, which is what Sauron wants. Ships can go to the Nexus, but it's been demonstrated that they don't necessarily survive those. So he brings it to a planet which could take it, and the Nexus will take him to his family, which happens. But Picard also gets swept away in that, and he's taken to a fantasy of having a family. If you're familiar with the series, Picard is a military guy through and through. He never made time for a family, and it is something that he regrets. So his experience is having a family. But also with Picard, he has been referred to as a Vulcan in the series. Being a military man, he's also extremely logical. He tries to see through every situation, which is why he's not easily duped by anything. So he figures out that he's, well, with the help of what the character Guinan says is an echo of herself, because she's in a different part. And through a reminder, too, in the fantasy that he's living out, it's Christmas. So some of the decorations have this exploding star. He's wondering about that because I think part of it is like, since you're so overwhelmed by this fantasy, you might forget what happened and how you got there. But he's curious about that, and Guinan explains to him why he's here and what's going on. Picard, being Picard, he's like, this isn't right, this isn't real, I can't stay here, I need help. And Guinan explains to him that there's someone else in the Nexus that could help him, and to him, he just got there too, Kirk. And Kirk is also kind of lost to the fantasy, but at the same time, he also comes to the realization that it's not real, and that it wouldn't matter what he did here. And Picard convinces him to come back to a certain point in time to stop Sauron. This movie would be a whole lot better if it was a half hour shorter. So, two actresses I mentioned in listing off the cast, Barbara March and Gwyneth Walsh. They play the Duras sisters. I know the Star Trek movies are largely made for the fans. I'm pretty sure there were people who saw this movie who weren't fans, and they might have been confused why there are Klingons in this movie. The Duras sisters are an integral part to the Next Generation storyline around Worf. And I'm not going to go into detail because it's too complex, but long story short, the House of Duras is a dishonorable house. They tried to weasel their way into becoming the leaders of the Klingon Empire. And that's largely what the Duras sisters want to do here. They're helping Sauron do whatever he wants to do. In return, they will be given information on trilithium and how they can weaponize it, thus wielding the ultimate power in the universe, giving them the leverage they would need to take over the Klingon Empire and probably the rest of the galaxy. I don't know if you could completely remove them from the movie, but certainly it could have been written shorter. For instance, in the last movie, you had the Klingon bird of prey that could cloak and fire at the same time. It's just conveniently forgot about through the rest of Star Trek, to my knowledge. I mean, yeah, the one that was destroyed in the undiscovered country is the only one that exists, but surely the plans for it exist somewhere. Why wouldn't the Dora sisters have found them and made their own version of that ship? You could have achieved the same thing that happens in the movie if they had that, and it would have cut the time that you have with the Dora sisters in half or even more. And I already touched on how Data is annoying in this movie, even though he does get some chuckles. It is cool seeing Picard and Kirk team up against Sauron, and it is fun just watching Malcolm McDowell be a villain. He's just so good at it. Especially his monologue about time. And also, Kirk has a really good monologue about the captain's chair. Even though the movie does have its faults with tone, storytelling, and runtime, I still really love this movie. Those are my thoughts on Star Trek VII Generations. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you for watching, and live your imagination.